What makes your heart tick? What spiritual path are you on? What do you believe? Let's dive deep into all things mystical, into the heart of the matter. You're listening to Deep Water with Cheryl, Earth Alchemy. This is Cheryl, and you are listening to Deep Water. We are here today with Rodney Goodwin with Hardcore Productions. How are you doing, Rodney?
Good. Doing good.
That's
Thanks
good.
for having me on. Appreciate it.
No problem. I'm excited because I like the way you do your astrology. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to work with your birth chart when you know your natal birth chart with the transits, like the transits we're going through today and the transits we'll be going through this year. So, Rodney, can you start off telling everyone how you started off in astrology?
Well, that's a very long process, boy. I tell you. Actually, I started getting interested in astrology probably in, I'd say, 2007,
Yeah.
where I was still in the church realm, and I was doing meetings and stuff. And I had this guy. His name was John Lewis. He was a kind of a Christian astrologist kind of dude, right?
Yeah.
And he wrote this book called Triboscope. So it was about basically the tribes of Israel, and then he correlated them to the 12 zodiac signs. And so I was interested in books. So I read his book, and that kind of sparked the interest in astrology for me. And so we started doing meetings together in hotels. And so we would have like music, and then we'd have meetings, and people would come and sign up for it and stuff like that. So that's really where it kind of sparked for me, like, oh, there's more to this. And then once I started diving, into like, because back then I was really into, Bible scripture and stuff. Not so much now, but back then. And I started looking at correlations in context to, actual astrology, and, the esoteric aspect that was going on there with so much astrology in the biblical uh, grimoire, so to speak, And I started like going, why is it that this isn't taught? Like I started asking questions because I thought it was very interesting that I started seeing so many signs of astrology within those scriptures that I was like, this is crazy. And so it really sparked my interest. And so I kind of started diving into it then. And then I kind of lost myself. I got sick really bad for about 4.5 years, and I had to pull myself out of it. So during that time, I was really studying like a lot of different types of arts of hypnosis. But I think it really, really, really ignited with me in 2017. Right after that eclipse is when I really started to like really dive into the deeper aspects of the deep water of astrology, and then started actually studying my own chart on a really, really deep level. Started
Mhm.
looking at my placings, the houses, the aspects, how things were correlating. Didn't even know what a Chiron was back then, and then I started looking at Chiron,
I
and some
love
of the
Chiron.
asteroid placings and stuff like
Hmm.
this. And I started like putting it like a picture. Now, when you're looking at your own natal chart, as you well know, it's there, you only get a glimpse of it when you first look at it. You're not It's like diving into this much of an ocean. I mean, you just get that surface hit, and then all of a sudden, the first thing that really gave me the big mind blow was planets have consciousness, planetary consciousness, and that like broke open something inside of my psyche, because it was like all of a sudden it was like everything in my whole Christian paradigm came crashing down at that point. And literally, like, the codes within my own spiritual DNA opened up. It's like, I know this stuff already. And so, like, it started, and from there, it just started unfolding. Like, the codes would open up, and I would crack, I'd burn through some other stuff. More codes would open up. And pretty soon, it's like, once I got the memory back of what I, in context to past incarnations and
Hmm.
the astrology journey that I've been on my soul progression work, it really opened up for me. So I didn't have to work that hard at it, to be honest with you. It
You,
wasn't
to
something,
me,
that,
it seems
you
like
know,
it's natural for you. Like since I've known you, it seems real natural for you. It flows real easily for you. You know, I like the way you talk about it. You know, you're really into it. And you know me, I love astrology. And we could talk about my birth chart a little bit just to help anyone that wants to understand their own birth chart. You could talk about your birth chart or just random, you know. But like with my birth chart, when I started like really I've been into astrology since I was a teenager, and when I really started getting into it, and not just the sun sign or the newspaper stuff, you know, it was more of the conjunctions, the aspects, the transits, you know, learning
yes.
what is what. And that's when I started understanding my life a little bit better. And I actually moved when I first started talking to you back, what, I guess 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. I lived in Oregon and I moved there because of Chiron. We were speaking of Chiron because I love Chiron and I knew I had a lot of wounds that I needed to be healed. And so I moved, I used astrocartography and I moved to Oregon. And that's why I was actually in Oregon. So, you know,
So that
Chiron,
line, yeah, that
yeah,
line
yeah.
runs right through there. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
well, for
great.
me it does. Yes, yeah. So,
Fantastic.
but you know, working with aspects and transits like we go through every day. Can you talk about that for me?
Yeah. So anytime you're dealing with certain transits to astrology, you've got to really understand the planetary consciousness, because that's where you're going to get, kind of the bigger picture of things. So you've got to understand how Saturn works. You've got to understand how Jupiter works, which are kind of consciousness creators on the solar spiral. You have your inner planets, you've got your outer planets, and then you've got Jupiter, the big players, Jupiter and Saturn, right? The heavy hitters.
Hmm.
And then you've got Chiron kind of bridging between the outer and inner planets, linking the conscious and subconscious minds together. And this is why I love Chiron so much, is because it has that aspect with it where not your wound is sitting there, yes, but the healing of that wound creates the gifts, or it brings forth the gifts that are lying there dormant, that haven't been initiated or activated. And so once you start understanding and understanding where your Chiron position is in context to where it's placed and then what it's aspecting, then you can get a bigger picture of how you can open up kind of your unconscious subconscious mind to allow those things to come into your waking consciousness, and that starts to create the awareness. See,
Hmm.
so if something's aspecting your Chiron, the
Hmm.
reason why it's aspecting it or transiting it is because there's something there that needs to be looked at, and there's also something there that needs to be activated. So there's two things going on at the same time. Not only is something being healed, but at the same time, that healing that's taking place is activating. And so it's opening up the bridge between your unconscious, subconscious, and unconscious mind, which is running Neptune, if you really want to look at it, to the subrealms. So that really is where the healing takes place, is the Neptune energy, as far as I'm concerned. So Uranus is kind of like the igniter. It kind of like ignites things and creates this like unpredictable aspect that comes in and says, "Hey, man, boom, we're going to open this up." And so it breaks it open, it ignites it,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
then when you're looking at that, you have to look. Then you can go into the subrealms of Neptune, the deep waters, the ocean, where the hidden treasure is. Maybe that treasure's been sunk. Could have been another incarnation, and that treasure's in that boat under there, but you don't know it's there. And so you have to dive deep down into the subconscious mind to find the treasure in a broken ship. And that's a lot what Neptune helps you do. And then the Plutonian energy then helps you transform it and bring it into the waking consciousness and actually deal with your shadow aspects, see? And
Hmm.
then transmute that energy, because it's energy, right? And we
Right.
want to bring it from your shadow into something you can actually work with to
Right.
help you prosper, become the transformer of your own life, the shaman of your own life.
when people see their birth chart, they go online and they put their information in the calculator, you know, the birth chart calculators, and they see their natal chart, and they which do you think that would help them the most? You know, most astrologers really don't look at like what all the written down stuff, right? We look at the wheel and where all the
Yeah.
placements are and all the triangles and the ratios of everything, you know. And so like when you give someone some advice on how to actually work with that instead of just reading it off like
Okay.
this is
Yeah.
this
So
is
the wheel of the I call it the wheel of the mage.
yes.
It is a wheel, and these are the angles or angels, the
Hmm.
messages
Hmm.
that are coming forth on the wheel that are showing you what your templating actually is, what is congruent, what's really going to be easier for you, and then what's going to be your challenges. So when we're looking at something that's going to be really easy for you, we're looking at a trine, 120 degrees, four gates. We're looking at a trine. So when certain things are trining each other, that means those planets are not just communicating; they're actually working with each other.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, and when we're looking at a sextile, that's communication. So those planets are communicating together. They're not necessarily working together on the ground so much as they are communicating to bring a congruency to your challenges, which are squares and conjunctions and oppositions. So a conjunction, believe it or not, is actually a challenge because it's a union of bodies or planetary consciousness that's trying to come together to form another consciousness. So think about this. Let's say you have Venus and Mars conjunct in a certain gate. That's a very challenging aspect because they're two very different energies.
Hmm.
Your Venus is love and it's finances and
Right.
it's
Earthly
balance, it's
placement.
harmony, it's
Yep.
partnerships, it's second and seventh gate. Whereas Mars is running the Aries energy, the Martian energy, right? Very powerful, wanting to get things done, ignite things, put things into action, and then it's also running the eighth gate as well to Scorpio, right? Which is
Hmm.
all transformative aspects as well. So they're two very different energies that are trying to come into union in a gate. Now, depending on where it's placed in that gate, right, and
Right.
what house it's aspecting back behind tells you whether it's exalted or it's debilitated in context to actually the energy that you have to work with. If it's in Aries and you've got this conjunction, well, Venus may be a little debilitated in Aries, but Mars is exalted there. So
Right.
there's certain depending on which gate you're looking at, Mars doesn't really like water gates necessarily so much,
Mm-mm.
especially in Pisces.
Mm-mm.
It's very debilitated in Pisces, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
but again, it loves like Gemini. It loves the air gates. It loves the fire gates. So when you're looking at Venus, Venus loves the water gates, right? They love the Pisces, Venus and Pisces. That is a beautiful position for
Yeah.
Venus,
So
right?
dreamy,
Yeah,
dreamy, dreamy.
yeah. Venus in Cancer, very emotional, but can be very, very beautiful, very powerful in its aspect to creativity, that moon energy that's running the gate as well. So it's just depending on when you're looking at your own personal birth chart. Like personally, I have Mars at 0 degrees Taurus in tropical, and in Vedic it's running in Aries, so it's exalted in Vedic. It's conjunct Mercury. So in tropical, I have it 0 degrees in Taurus, and I've got Mercury 1 degree. So both with Mercury and Mars, it creates a very powerful masculine energy for communication. And
Hmm.
that's what makes me a very good communicator,
Right.
right? Because then my Venus is sitting where? In Gemini. See? So
Mm-hmm.
that all that Venus energy then comes through, which tamps it down a little bit, so it's not so like in your face. And so
Right.
that's why, I think it's so funny. And I'll just say this real quick. So when I'm looking at the energy that I carry to my business, right, my bistro, and I'm looking at the demographics of who looks at my reels, who looks at my posts on Facebook, it's 77% women and 25% men, or 23% men.
on my YouTube, anyways.
Isn't that crazy? I
Well,
mean, so
it
it's
makes
like,
sense.
so it's like the Venus energy comes through in context to my templing when I'm communicating, but it also is very Martian and Mars like because of where my Taurus is placed
Well,
at
that's
0 degrees.
Taurus. Yeah, that
I mean, where
Taurus
my
is
Mars and
always
Taurus is, right? And my Mercury's there conjunct.
that Taurus will put an earthly spin on it, you know.
It does because it brings that Venus energy out, which is
Mhm.
sitting in Gemini. See,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
communication. So it helps to really bring out that very strong um, Venus energy, kind of love energy. But also with the Mercury sitting there with Mars conjunct, it also can be masculine as well. And depending on whose perception or what perception a person's looking at, they can
Right.
they can take it either way. You know.
Right, right. I have that moon, Taurus moon, with my Virgo ascendant and my
Yeah.
Sagittarius sun sign. So,
Right. Right.
earthy fire.
Exactly. So it really helps you to be very with your Virgo ascendant.
Mhm.
That's going to help you really be very proficient in checking everything and making everything everything's right, and then all
Yeah,
your T's are crossed, your I's are dotted,
absolutely.
and you've got
It is
everything
the
in
first
place.
degree. It's the
Yeah,
first degree, so I still got a ways to go.
yeah, right. But still, when you're running 0 and 1 degrees in a gate, it's actually a very powerful position, especially if you have a stellium in that gate, because it's holding the energy. So my Mars energy is actually holding the energy with my Mercury conjunct and my Jupiter conjunct there. And then my Sun is 17 degrees Taurus, which is later on in the gate. But I've got Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars conjunct in the early gate there of Taurus, which can be a very powerful place because it's like stepping into that gate, right? And all of a sudden, all the energy is getting ignited, you know, and zero,
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees. It's like boom, everything's booming in that gate because all those planetary energies have just moved in there, right? And so
Mhm.
they're really igniting that gate to a very powerful position. You get 27, 28, 29 degrees or kind of aneretic position, right? Then it
Mhm.
becomes challenging to
Right,
that
right,
gate, right? Because you're at the end of the cycle of
right,
that
right.
gate, and there's still maybe lessons and things that you need to accomplish and need to happen, within your karmic aspects that are going to be taking place there, especially if anything's aspecting Saturn. Then that those are going to be very challenging positions.
Well, when we talk about the Virgo in the first house, right? So I have the Virgo, I have a Earth trine. So I have the Capricorn, the Virgo, and the Taurus. So like
You have an
it
Earth
helps
trine.
me.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
an Earth trine. So it helps me with like the earthly or objects that I make and stuff like that. So when people look at their charts, they look for trines to
You
help
made
them
that.
connect. Yeah, I saw the tree. But so it helps people. So if it's like a water trine, and then it would be more like an emotional thing, right? Or air, it's more like thoughts, and then fire is with fire trines, like passion and all that. So when working with your birth chart, I think that a lot of people don't really understand that part of it. They just look at where the placements are or where they're at in the zodiac wheel, not like the trines, the yods,
Yeah,
stuff like
right. Yeah,
that.
there's so many different aspects. I mean, uh, it can really get to be a lot. I mean, you just have to really commit yourself to studying. I don't
Hmm.
I don't know too much about yods or kites or all that stuff. I haven't really got deep into studying all that.
Hmm.
Um, I think that when you're looking at like major Earth trines and fire trines and these type of things,
Hmm.
you know, these are very powerful positions in congruency to anything that's challenged in your chart. So I actually don't have that much challenged in my chart, except I have two oppositions and one square. Everything else is pretty congruent, but those two oppositions and that square is really intense because those are things I'm trying to work out to
Hmm.
karmic aspects that need to come into that congruency and to burn off the karmic lessons, which I've done a crap ton this lifetime. so that in your soul progression work, as you move on, you know, it's like, you know, if you're looking at the north node, south node, you know, they're always in retrograde. So we're looking at, you know, your body of work to K2 or your south node, and then your north node, you know, the Rahu aspect, you know, which is uncomfortable. It's a place that you don't necessarily know that much about, or have any aspects to, like, oh wow, I'm really familiar with this energy. No, you're not. It's your north node. You
Right.
know, your north node is the place where you need to go and you need to actually study, because your south node is kind of where you're comfortable. You know,
Right.
so my south node's Capricorn. I'm a
Mm.
very comfortable in that. You know,
Mine's
I
Taurus.
yeah, right,
Yeah,
which runs to your moon energy, and that's right in the
mhm.
second and seventh house. You know, and so that really is a very powerful. And then you got the Earth trine on top of it with Virgo and Capricorn. Now you're looking at really, why do I make all these things that I make? Right. Well, that's it.
Right on the money, man.
That's
And I'm
it.
good at making things, but it never goes anywhere.
Right. And you probably are able also to put your feet in the ground and feel the earth energy
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Earth
very
energy is
easily.
yes, yes. You know, I'm starting to grow plants. You know, so I'm good
Green
for this.
thumb. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yeah. All of that is really, you know, you probably had past, I'm sure, incarnations as, you know, working in shamanic, you know, tribes and tribal aspects and medicines and herbs and all these different types of things with the Virgo energy. You know,
hmm
I find that a lot of people with Virgo energy, whether it's ascendant or maybe in one of their pillars, are either like nurses or healthcare, you
right.
know,
Healers.
healers, this type
Yeah.
of thing, you
Right.
know,
Right.
because they have a lot of that earth energy, and they can literally put like a whole apothecary together in their house, and they have like, they go to it, you know, and they're mixologists, you know, and they know to take a little of this and a little of that, and they even use uh, what's it, where they use the arm and they test the energy. I can't think of the name of it.
Dowsing rods.
Yeah, or like when they ask the body a question,
hmm
and then they put like the energy of the herb
Yeah,
up.
the
Yeah,
keys.
right. And so then it's telling them, hey, the body wants this or it doesn't want this. And so these are all you know, arts and sciences and things that are coming back into the waking consciousness of humanity that have been lost. And that's because the ancestors are waking up, you
I
know,
think
with
so.
it
I
within our blood
definitely
and
think so.
bones. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the gods have always been with us. We're forgetting them. You know,
Yeah, we're just waking up to the fact that they, you know, that they're in our blood.
hmm
You know, they're in our bones, they're in our spiritual DNA, they're in our physical DNA, you know. And you know, with your earth energy, all that's coming comes natural to you. You just step into it and you know it. And when you study something, let's say you study something, and then that study, right, like diving into your chart, that
hmm
study ignites the code. See, because oh,
Right.
the remembrance comes. See.
Right, right. The code in the birth chart, it's kind of like people could see it as a like a fingerprint. It's like their fingerprint, their
Good
universal
point.
fingerprint.
Yes, fingerprint is
So
a
like
good way to put it.
when you learn the points on the fingerprint, you can actually see it. You could just see it when it goes on. You like if you know your placements, you can feel the energy when we go into different transits and what house it's going into, and it's just but I've been working with my birth chart for a long time, you know, so like I understand what's going on, you know. So with people, most people don't really understand that. Like when Mercury goes into retrograde, for example, it hits you in a certain spot. Not everybody else is going to get hit in that spot.
That's
It's
right.
how it's where it is in your house, is in your placements, is where it's going to hit, not when somebody else's. So something might happen to someone else for Mercury retrograde, but it's going to be different for you because it's a different placement.
Depends on what it's transiting.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, you know, and like we have this right now. We have this Mercury Venus
Mm,
retrograde
yeah,
going on, which is
right.
super cool, because it's real. I did a little video on it the other day. It's like an undertow in the ocean, you know, because
hmm
it's going to be stepping into Pisces. So during that time, it's going to be conjunct Saturn. So we have this. It's like there's this karmic aspects that are sitting underneath the ocean, underneath the water, right? You don't even know they're there. And all of a sudden, the undertows of all that water in Pisces starts to churn on the retrograde because it's going in opposition to where planets move, right? So it's
Hmm.
like a churn, and it starts churning up that stuff from your unconscious, subconscious, up into your waking consciousness to come up for review. And this is where we get alchemy. This is how alchemy works, because then you have an opportunity to step into a transmutation process that is going to help you heal. This is what I try to tell people all the time. Don't miss these opportunities in your life for these transits that are going on, especially if something's transiting one of your pillars. Do not miss the opportunity to step into the alchemical process and get some healing, because you're not going to get that opportunity again.
Yeah, that's what it's for, I think, right?
Yeah,
That's what it's. I mean, I
absolutely.
think that's where the evolution comes into process of it all.
Yeah, because that's what the solar spiral is designed to do. It's designed to be our partner in the regenesis, spiritual regenesis aspect, and in with the stellar activations that are taking place to help us to on our journey, on our soul progression work, to really burn off the ignorance of our lot of our journey, the stupid stuff. And not only that, but also what's in the bloodline that was done, that you incarnated into, so that that bloodline can heal. You know, I mean, there's so much going on a multidimensional level when we're looking at, working with high planetary magic, that um, it's mind blowing to me sometimes. It's just all of you really have to focus in on a few things. Your brain can explode because there's so much, and so you really have to, like, kind of come into laser focus on a few things that you really want to work on, and that's why you look at transits, because if those transits are taking place at that certain time, you can really hone in on some really incredible healing that could take place. And looking at certain transits that are going on, especially with Saturnian energy, and you're looking at, like right now, Saturn's transiting my moon. So things are really coming up for review right now for me personally, to foundations, structures. What the hell do I want to actually do with my life? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing right now? Do I feel like I need to make a shift, or I continue going on with what I'm doing? I mean, all these questions now are coming up into my waking consciousness and coming up for review, because Saturn's sitting there and it's saying to me, "Hey, okay, take a look at this," you know, and you're going to ultimately make the choices, but it also is going to bring up choices that you made in your past that you may have been very naive about,
Oh
and
yeah,
not really saw what you were doing, or
right.
or or paid attention to what you were actually putting into motion or into action. That's happening to me right now, the naivete. And I'm just like, oh man, I was so naive when I did that choice. Oh my god, and now I got the consequence of it. How the hell do I get out of this now?
Yeah, I'm trying not to make any silly decisions. With me being a Sagittarius sun sign, I want to go. I want to travel. I want to just go, go, go. And since the lockdown, I've been sitting in the woods, and so I'm like, I want to go. I want to go so bad. I want to travel so bad, but I can't because I have responsibilities.
Right, but you can always go to your third house and do some short distance travel.
Oh, yeah, true.
But that
But
doesn't
I've been
really
all over
that
the
doesn't
United
really
States.
it kind of scratches the itch a little bit. But
Well, not really, because I've been all over the United States. I've been all over the place, and so before all that, I've been. What I want to do is like go to Norway and get
oh
into go
yes,
to
yes,
Ireland and all that Norse mythology stuff, and go see the Black Sea maybe. That would be kind of cool. But
yeah, I'd love to walk the black sand.
hmm
Yeah, Iceland.
that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But I have a stellium in Sagittarius, so.
Right, yeah. So the stellium and Sagittarius definitely driving the narrative to long distance travel.
hmm
You should be like traveling all over.
would love to. I would
But
love
your earth energy is also grounding. So there's kind of a battle there because that
it. There
fire
is
wants to
every
move,
day, every day.
but the earth wants to ground. And so sometimes it's like a fire on the earth. You're just like,
Hmm.
you want to go, I want to
Right.
do this, I want to do that, you know. But on the other side, depending on where your Jupiter's at, is your Jupiter in Sag?
No, it's the ninth house in
Oh,
Taurus.
it's a Taurus. You got a Taurus Jupiter ninth house.
Hmm.
Wow. So that's definitely causing a little bit of a struggle for you
Oh yeah.
with
Oh
that
yeah.
aspect.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. See, my Jupiter's in eighth house in Taurus, so I run the 2-8 axis.
Hmm.
So on one hand, I want to be able to, I love grounding and I love all this stuff, right? But then on the other hand, I've got that eighth house sitting there and it's demanding transformation, especially with a Taurus energy where my sun sets, where my Mercury sets, where my Mars sets. It's demanding transformation because all that's in the eighth house. See?
Hmm.
And so I trigger people very easily because of that, even though I'm not trying to. I'm not
You don't
trying to
trigger
trigger
me.
people.
I trigger people. You know I
Yeah,
do.
yeah. It's just the way it is. I can't help it. I got Pluto in the 12th. I
Well,
can't help it. It's part of, that eight. I have a lot of eighth house and 12th house energy. It's a lot of, you're tapping into people's subconscious realms where they don't like it.
well, I have that North Node Scorpio in the third house, so it's kind of that as well, where I can like tap into people, and I'm not even trying to in a sense, but it's still new to me. So not so much anymore. But since I started working with my birth chart, I understood it more. How working with the North Node versus the South Node, because as hard as I work, I'll never get anywhere. It's always that North Node that I've got to focus on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. North Node of Scorpio is where you have to go.
Hmm.
You want to transform your Sagittarian sun
Right.
into something that's going to be very powerful as a teacher, as as a mentor, as your own teacher, your own shaman, your own guru,
Right.
higher learning, all that, right? All that gets transformed with the Scorpio energy when you're running that. Where's your seventh house placing at in context to Libra? Do you
It's
have
Pisces. Libra's second house. Pisces is the seventh house.
so what's setting in the seventh house?
Nothing is in the seventh house. It's just Pisces is there.
Okay, so you don't have so
No,
in your
my Saturn is in Leo, which is the 12th house.
okay, so you got Saturn in 12th house.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, all right, yeah. So that is, I mean,
It's
the
all
second the second
oscillation.
half of your life, the
Oh
second
God.
half of your life is where you're going to get all of your traction.
Well, that's good. The first half's been crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, literally, like going into the once you cross that threshold, going into that second, that second part because Leo, that Leo energy wants to shine, man.
Right. Right. But
Sun,
there's
it's
no
sun,
like.
right? So it wants to really shine,
Mhm.
and it wants to be, it wants to be in alignment, but it wants to shine. It wants to have a lot of strength. But that's kind of been your limitation as well, is putting yourself out there, getting the confidence to
Right.
step into a place of teaching.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Or
and,
just
and
like because I do a lot of dancing. I've been doing that, but talking and communicating and doing what I'm doing with podcasts. That's kind of part of that. When I started the podcast, I was wanting to do because I knew the North Node's going into Pisces, and I wanted to do the Virgo Pisces thing, where like the deep water, the emotional, getting down into like the heart of things. Like Pisces is going to be like for me, anyways. And instead of just always nitpicky with the analytical stuff, the every little detail. And that's what for me back in the past, that's what I would get lost in, and all the little detail of things, and just and then say screw it, kind of like a perfectionist of sorts.
get it. Yeah, I mean, it
So,
it, it takes time to learn
mhm,
how to balance the 12-6 axis. I have
mhm,
my moon's there.
mhm.
So um learning how to find the seventh gate, which is that balance and harmony of the scales, to your hemispheres, the logical side, the practical side, the Virgo side, and then your intuition and the dreamy aspect and all, all of your gut instincts and all that of Pisces. Learning how to do that with your mind it is a challenge to balance those energies and know when to be practical and logical and have reason, but then also trust your intuition in the midst of
Right.
that, and be able to bring those into the fulcrum, into balance. That is really what a mage is supposed to do. That is really their goal, is
Hmm.
to be able to balance the 12-6 axis when it comes down to it. Because that is and we're looking at it. I mean, it is the last stop on the wheel, 12th house,
Right.
Pisces. And so the opposition of that to the 6th house, then, people can get, especially a Virgo ascendant, you can get super, if you don't watch it, you get super OCD on certain things
Yes. Yes.
that are like, and then they can trigger, certain aspects. Like I used to know this guy. I'd go to his house and I'd sit there. He goes, "Oh no, don't sit there. Don't sit there." He goes, "I just cleaned that." Or if I moved anything in his house a little bit, or he would just like go like, ballistic. And so that's very OCD Virgo
Hmm.
energy,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know. But then on the flip side of that, Pisces can be, oh, whatever, man, and we'll just get along with it, man, and let's just
Oh
go with
yeah.
whatever.
I like the cosmos.
So there's that dichotomy there that that really needs balance. And
Hmm.
that's why I always, when I read birth charts, or I'm looking at birth charts, I look where the 7th house is. What is it aspecting, what's in there, what's setting there, and because the 7th house is where you're going to find your balance, you're going to find your harmony. So I look at the descendant, because the descendant is your 7th house. See? And
Hmm.
so that's where I go to the descendant, which is relationships. And I have an Aries 7th house with that, because I'm a Libra ascendant.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Libra rising, Aries descendant. So I have a tendency to draw Aries people into my life that have a lot of Aries energy, Mars energy. It's crazy.
Aries. I have a few Aries in my life. That's a hard energy for me, but I'm a Sagittarius, so we can both get really fiery. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So you need so the Aries needs Scorpio. Really does, to teach it, because Scorpio is going to help, be the transformer of all that really powerful Martian energy
mm,
that's trying to do things and be into action, and all this. And that 8th house then is able to help teach Aries, how to come into transformation. Because if, let's say, a person has an Aries ascendant, right? And let's say that Aries ascendant, and let's say they have an Aries sun, either on either side, 12th house or first house, right? So their
mm,
sun is conjunct their ascendant. That person right there is going to do shit that they don't even know they're doing and why they're doing it, or they won't even think about why they're doing it until the consequence of Saturn comes around and hits them in the ass. See? And then it'll hit them and they'll wake up and they'll, well, how the hell did that happen? Well, that was a choice that you made because you
right.
didn't think about it. So you just dove in with your sword, on the battlefield. You didn't actually have a strategy.
Aries.
8th house gives you the strategy. See?
Yeah. Yeah, eighth house with my Aries in the eighth house. I maybe probably view death a little bit differently than a lot of people. Maybe I would think that in some people, because Aries is like real fiery in the eighth house, right? And it would be initiatory. So death isn't to me like well, I watched both my grandparents pass. So like when I was younger, not anytime soon, but when I was younger. So like to view that and watch them take their last breath and stuff like that, it doesn't feel like a ending to me. You know what I mean? It feels more
Right.
like
Yeah.
just another phase.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And that with me too, I've seen a lot of death take place, as far as family members, and
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, I have a couple other things that have been going on in my life, but a person with a lot of Scorpio or eighth house energy views it as a transition, not so much as like a loss. I don't know,
Right.
because it is what it is.
Right.
You can't control that. So the fact of the matter is that when I was a kid, it's funny. My aunt lived with us for a while, and I would see like major catastrophes take place on TV or death or something like that, and I would
Hmm.
laugh. And she said to me, "That's a serious situation. How come you're laughing?" I said, "Because it's just funny." I said, "Because what's happening here is tragic, yeah, but it's not like it's an event that I got no control over, you know?" And she never could figure out why I would take it so lightly, like, and that's the reason, because of the eighth house energy that I have, back behind my sun and Jupiter and Mars and Mercury. Same thing with you, even with your North Node sitting in Scorpio. That gives you like a total different, like you're talking about, total different view of how death is actually viewed through the
Right.
lens of the eighth house.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's beautiful, actually.
So
It's not something we should be afraid of.
no, I don't think so. It's just another transition, another energy. I don't think energy dies, or so I think it's just going to be transmuted in some form or fashion. You know.
Yeah, I mean, our soul, we're incarnated into this technology, and through the into the bloodlines,
Hmm.
for a reason and a purpose. It's not just random selection here. I mean, there are calculation, there's points of reference, there's portals and all this stuff that people don't really think about. The sun itself being a portal coming into this realm and context. They don't think about those type of things, and how certain codes and certain aspects to your templating have to be present to even get into this place. Otherwise you don't get in. So it's like, so you got to have some type of templating to actually experience the earth realm.
Right. Malkuth, whatever you want to call it. Right.
Right, yeah, exactly. So I don't think a lot of people even think that deep, to how they got here, their universal multiverse
Their fingerprints
journey.
and things.
How are they affecting, how is that affecting, not only themselves but the relationships around them, or even diving in. I mean, if you would, Cheryl, if you would ask any, like, the random person on the street, they may know their sun sign because they know what month they're born. But if you
Hmm.
ask them what their moon sign is,
They
you
have no.
ask them, any other placement, they wouldn't have a clue.
Mm-mm. No,
You
when I
know?
start talking, they look at me like, what? Like, huh?
Yeah, right, right. And so, that's why it's so
You're
important,
crazy.
really, to know how to look at your own birth sign, know how to, your birth chart, know how to actually look at the transits that are taking place at certain times within your life. Your Chiron return 49, your Saturn return 29, 30, 59, 60.
Hmm.
These are very, very important returns.
Right.
Your solar return. I don't think most people even understand what a solar return actually is. Oh, it's my birthday, man. No, it's not your birthday. You only have one of those. It's actually a reset of the energies on as the sun does a full progression. And you have to, on your solar return, you can literally find the calculations of what the reset is and what the energies that you're going to be working with to your actual sun and moon and Mars and Venus and houses and ascendant and everything to the for the next year.
Yeah, progression charts, and
Yeah,
a
right.
lot of people don't understand that also with birth charts, you can cast a birth chart for a business,
Absolutely. Or country for that matter.
country,
Yeah.
or a relationship. Just whatever you really want to do. I mean, when you cast a chart, you're just seeing what the energies are all together through the planets. So
Exactly. I mean, you can definitely. I mean, you can cast a chart for your pet. I mean, like, what would be the characteristics of your dog or your cat?
Mine's a
I mean,
Taurus.
literally, I mean, when we look, I mean, astrology is as old as breath itself, really,
Right,
when it
right,
comes down to it, because that's what it is. It's actually the cosmic winds that you're breathing in to
right,
magnetize your templating.
right. That's why I call it the cosmic fingerprint. It's like,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
then the placements of it. And, I've made dream catchers so long over the years. I used to make bird chart dream catchers where it had the spiral like you're talking about. And, if I could figure out how to way to make it and actually move, that would be so cool.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
What was that? What was that movie or that series? Uh, the Dark Crystal series,
Yes, 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 yes.
where they walk. I think I have it on one of my videos where they walk in and she has the cosmos moving
I love it.
like all over,
Mhm.
and she's looking at like alignments and planetary conjunctions and stuff. Man, it's
And a lot of
really,
people
really.
don't understand that birth charts are just pretty much mathematics. Like I
It
admit I'm
is.
not very good at math, but it is mathematics.
Yes.
So like angles. You said you didn't know much about the yacht. It's just another. It's just the angles. It's different triangles. A lot of
Yeah.
things.
Right. Exactly. And when you're looking at a kite, you
Yeah.
know, we're looking at trined energy and then sextiles energy to the
Hmm.
trine. So
Right.
it looks like a kite, and then you have something coming up in the middle in an opposition. It's
Right.
that opposition to the kite energy that's the challenge. That's why the kite is formed so that it can resolve the opposition. So you have to learn how to balance those opposing
Right.
energies
Right.
in your templating.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what the
Yes.
kite's there for. See?
And
I know a little bit about it. There's so much more to that, especially
oh, there's so
origami.
much to all astrology. A lot of people don't understand that either. Is like astrology is a big study. It's not just one little your sun sign, your moon sign. It's huge topic because there's different forms of astrology. The Vedic astrology, the evolutionary. There's this new Ophiuchus astrology, which I'm not a big fan of, but people seem to like it. I don't know. What do you think about the 13th zodiac sign?
Oh, you're talking about a ficus?
Yes, yes.
Uh, I've studied it somewhat.
Hmm.
The Vedas do not like it.
I don't like it, but I'm a Sagittarius, so it messes me all up.
Yeah, right. So it's interesting. It's kind of I think they refer to it as the return of the cosmic ether, so to speak. Um, it it definitely has correlation with Chiron, I would say,
Yeah.
in some ways. The archetype is a clepus, which is the single snake running up
Hmm.
the staff.
Hmm. Hmm.
And a clepus is a healer as well, like
Yes.
Chiron.
Hmm.
You know, um, I don't necessarily know too much more about it because I haven't really studied it that much, but I know it
Well,
kind of throws a wrench into the gates,
well, I know I
and the
looked
play
at
and where things are placed and stuff.
right. Well, I went and looked at like the actual astronomy part of it, not just the astrology, but the astronomy
Right?
part
Yeah.
to see where it was in the galactic light, the zodiac wheel light, what makes the zodiac, and it's just a little bitty tip of it, just a little bitty tip of it right there.
Yes.
It's not the whole thing; it's just a little bitty spot of it. So I don't count it because it's not the whole thing. It's not the whole constellation.
I agree. Yeah,
So
I have to kind of agree with you on that. Getting into the Vedic aspect, I have a girl that I'm seeing, and she is a Vedic astrologer
mhm,
and a damn good one. And so I have been, she's been reading my charts,
mhm,
D9 charts, Prasha charts, Dasha. So right now I'm in a Dasha. I'm in my Venus Dasha with Saturn. So it's like I started to look back at all of the energies in correlation to my life from when I was born and events that took place and which dasha I was in when that event took place. Fascinating. I mean, getting into I'm starting to get into Vedic, which I hadn't been that much. It's just fascinating how uh, the energies are read. You know,
well, I've not been into it a whole lot. I've had my chart done, several years back, and it seems to me it's like a subconscious energy, like the Vedic versus the Western. It's like a subconscious energy compared to the Western astrology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the kind of person that I look at everything because I'm
Hmm.
I'm you know it's gnosis is gnosis,
Right,
and then what's going to resonate with you is going to resonate. And when we're looking at the axis tilt, to tropical, and we're looking
hmm
at Vedic,
hmm
it's running a really different energies. Like in Vedic, I'm of stellium Aries,
I'm
eighth
a
house,
Scorpio.
right, right. But then I see how that correlates to the tropical chart when I look at certain placings, with Rahu, K2, north south node,
Hmm
and then looking at my ascendant. So my ascendant moves from Libra to Virgo
hmm
in Vedic, and so there is so much there to learning like certain aspects. I mean, I always tell people when I give a birth chart reading that we are the whole zodiac.
Right.
We really are, and so we have to realize that the reason this particular templating that we came in on and that we breathed in when we were born is what we needed to our soul progression work, to our templating, to resolve certain karmic aspects that need to be burnt off, to reweave in context to the Norns, reweave our weird, right? There's so much vibrational correspondence and correspondence to different arts of gnosis and tapestry that runs through astrology. It's mind blowing, you
It's
know.
it really is. It's such a big study, a big topic. Where can people find you?
They can get a hold of me, Gmail, Hardcore Productions at .9 at gmail.com. Keep forgetting about the nine. So Hardcore Productions, Gmail, 9 at gmail.com. I have a Hardcore Productions actual Facebook page that they can book a session on.
Hmm
Um, you can get a hold of me just on my Facebook account, Rodney Goodwin. You can message me there. You can also go to my website, hardcoreproductions.com. Those are basically the main ones where people hit me up at.
Are you're not doing like printed birth chart readings, but you do work with people and with their birth chart. You do their birth charts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I do. If you go look at my website, I have regular birth chart reading. I could do transit readings. I could do synastry charts. Um, I also do counseling with transits. If you're going through a really hard time, I can look at those and then give you some solutions and aspects there that can help you get out of certain things. Business, if you're starting a business or whatever, I can look at the energies of that. I also do tarot readings. I do rune readings. I do a kind of a nine realm reading with tarot and runes a
Hmm,
combo.
nice.
Um, so I've got a lot of different readings that you can look at on the hardcoreproductions.com page. Um, Astrology is my main focus,
Mhm.
but I study all of it because it all has planetary correspondence. When we're talking the gates and the houses and the planetary orbs. It all has resonance. It all has purpose. It all has the ability to transform your mind.
Right, right, right. Um, do you find people that come for you with astrology, with their astrology, do they come back and like keep coming back for more answers, right?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things that I do with my readings is I give a follow up with it. So you can come
Oh,
back, and it's included in the price of the first reading. And if you have any questions, or you have anything that you're wanting to look at, down the road or whatever, you can hit me back up, and then I'll go back over certain things with you. I send them the charts, I send them the recordings. Um, I actually send out books with stuff, so people can start diving into astrology. I always send the Hermetica, the seven laws with it, the book. So the Hermetica becomes a very powerful aspect if someone hasn't really dropped into that. So I think a lot of people who are really, really serious about wanting to dive into their templating, find out who they are, because that's really what we're doing here.
Right.
That's really what astrology is. The biggest point about it is it's to know thyself, and astrology is, as far as I'm concerned, it's one of the biggest arts of gnosis that you can tap into, the massiveness of it. But start slow. I just started working with my sun and moon. Really. I mean, I just started with that. And then once I started to do my moon, I just worked with my moon cycles for nothing, almost 6 months. And I would just look at my moon cycle and see where it was going, what I was feeling, what it was transiting. And I would look at it every day or every other day and just look at it and see how I was feeling, what was coming up. And you can also do that with your sun. You can look and see what sun is transiting. And you just start very simple. You don't have to get crazy wild with it at first.
No.
Just pinpoint certain things,
Right.
work with a certain energy.
And think about like he was talking about earlier, the consciousness of the planet too. Like if you wanted to work with each planet once a week or once a day or once a month, just to understand the planet itself, because some of these planets, you actually can feel that energy. Like you really can if you really look at it and study the planets and pay homage to the planets. So people are so worried about Saturn, like when you pay homage to Saturn, maybe do something on Saturday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It's really
Right.
simple stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, Saturn's not the boogeyman.
No,
I mean, this is, it's been portrayed as that, the black sun, right? And the
cube.
boogeyman and the cube and the six and the hex and all that, right? The worship of the Saturnian energy at the Vatican and all this, right? I mean, it's been depicted
Satan.
as very
It's
dark,
Satan.
satanic
Satan.
thing, but that's what they wanted you to believe.
Right.
Actually, so the Saturnian energy is something that you need to work with and understand that that's where actual natural law and cosmic law resides to time.
Mm-hmm. And Earth, the Earth
Yeah,
is, we
yeah,
are space and we are time.
right, exactly. So when you're looking at Saturn, you've got to look at Moon because that is actually a really powerful connection. Saturn Moon matrix is what they call it. And this is what people get locked down in the context of the inversions. So they're on the reversals in their mind and their moon, and that's what gets jammed so that they break the cosmic principles of the Saturnian energy, which creates karmic aspects, and then it puts them on the loop. See? And that's how that matrix works. So you're not only like trying to figure out who you are, it keeps you locked down from finding out who you are because your moon's jammed all the time. Your navigation, your mind, right? So you don't know your moon placing, right? And know where your actual fourth house is or your Cancerian energy in context to the moon gate that runs that. See? And so that's really where the initiatory aspect is to the tarot if you want to take it to the high priestess.
We'll have to talk about that another time. The
I
correlation
mean,
to
this, you want to get into correspondence.
no,
There's
well,
so
that's
much
another.
there.
There's so much there. It's a huge topic.
Yeah.
The correlation to the tarot cards and astrology, that's the sister sciences and stuff like that. The
Oh my lord.
numerology behind it, all of it. It's a huge topic.
Oh yeah, right. But this is the reason why Saturn's been the boogeyman because
Mhm.
everybody wants to think of it as the great Satan or being the
Right,
mastermind behind my demise. You know, as Cream would say, born under a bad sign. You know,
it's really all it depends on how you work with the energy.
there are no bad signs.
No,
There are debilitated positions where you may have to work a little bit harder, and there's squares and oppositions and stuff where you have to work a little bit harder. But let's face it, without some type of resistance in front of you, and some type of challenge in front of you, how are you going to grow?
Right.
I mean, if everything's just, the life of Riley and everything just comes to you so perfectly all the time, then, hey man, let's just do it. You got to have some type of challenge in front of you, something forging like Saturn, forging the legacy, bringing it forth and then putting in the work to make that happen. And then because of that work that you put in, then on the back end of that, you're going to reap the reward of that work. That's Saturn.
Yes, that's Saturn. Work and karma and dharma. That's what you
Yeah, because you're flipping the karmic aspect of the lessons that you need to learn to cosmic principle, and it's coming into your waking consciousness, and you actually form a moral code as a human being, which is lacking so terribly in our society.
Oh God, yeah.
It's so disheartening to see how many people are so immoral about things, and they don't care.
They do not care. There's so much apathy going on. It's ridiculous. It's just like whatever doesn't involve me. Whatever, I don't care. Whatever. Or it's gotten to people don't believe in any kind of truth anymore. Not within themselves. Not within the world.
Yeah, and it's their truth, right? Or
Right.
it's what I'm doing is the most important thing,
Right.
or as long as
Right.
I get mine, I don't give a shit.
Right.
It's entitlement attitude that everybody seems to have, and it's funny because I see that working around people all the time, hiring help and customers coming in and this and that. I see a lot of that in the consciousness, and as a business owner and a leader of that business, I call it out because it's got to be called out. I can't have that affecting, the energy field of my business,
Right.
board field of what I'm doing, So when I see that apathy, when I see that stagnation, when I see that entitlement, I call it out for what it is, and maybe they don't like it, but it's part of who I am, and it's part of helping them grow as well.
Once again, tell them where they can find you. Whatever you would like to plug yourself, however you would like to plug yourself.
Yeah, hardcoreproductions9@gmail.com. Hardcore Productions on my Facebook page. You can hit me up at Rodney Goodwin on Messenger if you'd like. Most of my stuff is public on my Facebook page as well. And then you can get a hold of me also or take a look at my website, hardcoreproductions.com.
All right. Well, I think this has been excellent. I think a lot of people, it's much needed. People need to understand birth charts a little bit better.
Yeah, of course.
The new age movement's kind of made it all fluffy, where we've got like weird stuff going on. They don't know what they're talking about most of the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, astrology is synonymous with alchemy. That's what you always have to remember. It is the epitome of the alchemical process when you're working with high planetary magic. And that is exactly what it's designed for.
Yes. Well, I'll have to have you come back on, and we'll talk about planetary magic and like secret societies, maybe.
Hey, that sounds great. Yeah, perfect.
All right. Right. Well, you have a great day, and thank you, audience, and join us again on Deep Water with Cheryl, and thank you.
All right. Much love. Have a good one.
You